This particular revelation is very troubling. What we've got here is on April 11th, 2017, Andrew Weissman, who is a member of Mueller's team, met with the Associated Press reporters and walked them through this black cash ledger, which they knew was not credible, or should have known wasn't credible. The report comes out the next day, and then Weissman's team cites the AP story that they sourced in this document, right? It appears to be a deliberate attempt not to use a document that they knew to be false by using media report as well. By the way, this report by John Solomon also points out that Weissman's team never used this black cash ledger with the grand jury. So they knew it was false. That implies that they knew it was false, but they put the story into the AP and then used it in their document anyway. That, according to not just me, but Alan Dershowitz, liberal lawyer Alan Dershowitz, that, he said, is a possible fraud.
Well, right. Whether or not it counts under the elements of criminal fraud, it's certainly ethical fraud. The thing is, okay, so this is a very shady trick, and it's been exposed. And we can now see that it's not the only time that it's been used. The intelligence community has done this before. They did it with Michael Isikoff at Yahoo about the Christopher Steele dossier as well, to corroborate the Christopher Steele dossier on the FISA court warrants. They cited an article written by Michael Isikoff, yet Christopher Steele was the source of Michael Isikoff's article about the Steele dossier. So they just looped their own information through the media and acted like the media had independent sources when they were going to use their own unverified information as a weapon against Republicans.
Exactly. And by the way, Andrew Weissman has a long history of activity like this. This is an individual who he was the one who was responsible for something that your viewers might remember, Liz, which is the collapse of Arthur Andersen after the Enron scandal. Now, I was involved in the attempt to help that company, and I remember this very clearly. You had a handful of people at Arthur Andersen who had behaved in a way that it was not clear whether it was illegal or not, and yet Weissman made certain that the jury didn't hear the proper instructions. The jury was instead instructed that whether or not the employees knew that there was actual criminal wrongdoing in what they were doing, you could still indict this company. Well, let me tell you what happened. Ultimately, this was overruled unanimously by the Supreme Court. When does the Supreme Court ever overrule the U.S. federal government unanimously? It did, and it cited this particular problem, and this is a long-time pattern. He's a guy who bends over backwards to get his guy, even when it costs Manafort his entire life, basically, and Arthur Andersen, it cost 60,000 people their jobs.